Hey folks, today is Wednesday, August 13th. It is 2:48 p.m. and the temperature right now is pretty hot, 27 degrees Celsius. And I'm here at Queen and Yonge Street in downtown Toronto, and that was the Eaton Centre I was just in. And it's a pretty lively Wednesday afternoon so far. I just had lunch in the Eaton Centre after recording a live stream that started at Dundas Square and went down to the lake. And there's a view north up Yonge Street, but for this one I'll be heading east along Queen Street East. And this is a video inspired by a recent video I saw on YouTube by someone who goes by the name of Eric D. Realtor. And they posted a video on why some Toronto streets feel empty. And I've often commented when I'm on the east side of downtown that some stretches along the major streets like Queen Street feel kind of empty relative to the rest of the city. And I'm glad he tackled that topic in his video and provided a lot of interesting ideas and insight. So it's not my intent to hijack his content. I'll put a link to his video down in the description, but go check it out for sure. I'm definitely just not trying to take his content and repackage it, but I do want to show what he's talking about.
She bought
Also, it's just been a while since I've done a walk through Queen Street East. We are on the east side of downtown. And this construction on the left is due to Ontario Line construction. The streetcars have been stopped between York and Church Streets. There's a diversion that goes south down to Adelaide and Richmond Street. This here is Victoria Street. And there's a look south down Victoria. So between Victoria and River Street is the historic Queen East Corridor. And we'll be going by a number of landmarks along the way. There's St. Michael's Hospital across the street. But for the first few blocks, things will be quite busy from a pedestrian activity point of view. But you'll notice the further east I go, the less people you'll see, and the more vacant retail spaces you'll see. And there's the Metropolitan United Church across the street. One of three major churches you'll find on Church Street. This is Bertie Street. It's only a block or so in length. Things are pretty quiet along this stretch of Queen, given that it's blocked off just west of here at Victoria Street. There's the Metropolitan United Church. But in his video, he cites the area east of Church, which is coming up. And the DVP as an example of a neighborhood wanting to change, but one that can't. This was a somewhat iconic spot on the corner here, at least visually iconic. It was a shawarma restaurant. Now a condo is moving in that spot. And you'll notice there's a number of new developments going up here. For a lot of these, the developer of each property had to apply for amendments to the zoning bylaws, and that's a very, very expensive and time-consuming process. And that is why we're seeing development more towards the core of downtown on the east side of Queen Street. There will be very little of this, a little bit east of here. And there's a 60-story building planned for just on the right. There's downtown camera. So really, if you want to build on this side of town, at least along Queen Street, you have to be a deep-pocketed developer. I believe that's the south end of Mutual Street. But most of this stretch of Queen Street is zoned for mixed commercial residential use. I believe CR is the zoning designation. And for most buildings, residential use or mostly residential use is not permitted. And there's rather low demand for commercial use along this stretch, at least the further east we go. Things are already starting to thin out. But there are limits on how much commercial and residential can be in a new development. But one thing he didn't mention that's definitely a factor with Queen Street East, at least this part, is the fact that a lot of it goes through the Moss Park neighborhood. I don't want to offend anyone, but if you were to list the most undesirable neighborhoods in downtown Toronto, Moss Park would probably be right at the top of the list. That's the Moss Park Armory across the street, and Moss Park itself, a lot of it is under construction as they're adding an Ontario line stop right at Queen and Sherbourne. And that'll probably inject a lot of life into the area. But it's worth noting, oh, that streetcar just honked at that car. Maybe it got too close, but it's worth noting just south of here, There's a lot of development along Adelaide and Richmond and King Street. The whole St. Lawrence neighborhood is full of new projects going in, but up on Queen Street East, it's kind of a big dead zone. The businesses are getting fewer and further between. There's a lot of vacant storefronts, not a lot of pedestrian activity. And in his video, Eric states a lot of that is due to the city's desire to maintain that so-called Main Street feel. By ensuring there's a strong commercial presence along the strip. What's that? Dante Bistro? So this area remains zoned CR with limits to the amount of residential units that could go into a redevelopment. But if you can't build more residential units in a city that's starved for residential units, and they are building just south of here, a lot of the pedestrian activity is going to end up along the streets that parallel Queen, but are to the south, such as King. And even Adelaide and Richmond, which have been traditionally quiet, are picking up in terms of the number of businesses there and retail activity, which kind of sets all of Queen Street East into a bit of a downward spiral. They can't build here. There's not much reason for people to come here. So it just kind of ends up being this black hole. This is one of the more notorious intersections in the city, Queen and Sherbourne. I've never had any issues here, but often you'll find a lot of interesting characters hanging out. There's been murders at that store right there, Moss Park discount store, as well as in this location, right behind me. But look at this, a whole stretch of retail. There's nobody in sight. It's going to be super interesting to see when the subway comes to this part of downtown, if this area will be reinvigorated or not. And I agree with Eric, he's not necessarily pushing for gentrification, and neither would I. If you want to give this neighborhood a shot in the arm, you're going to have to open it up from a zoning perspective and build a place people want to come live in. And as pointed out on the the Urbanity channel, even today's expensive new condos become tomorrow's affordable housing. No matter what your thoughts are on the state of housing, more housing is generally a good thing. And this area is starved for it. And there is Kim's Convenience. At least where the exterior the TV show was set. That building was up for sale, including the convenience store at one point. I wonder if that's still the case. And the Moss Park Apartments, run by the city's housing authority, are across the street, employing a very neighborhood-unfriendly towers in the park design. That kind of design never works out. You end up with towers that are kind of cut off and isolated from the rest of the city, rather than be built up to the curb. There can still be spaces for a parquet, but this type of development, to my knowledge, hasn't worked out anywhere in the city you see it. You'll see a lot of this up at Jane and Finch and in the suburbs. You'll just have some apartments surrounded by a moat of green space. There might be a tuck shop or two within the development. That creates a very isolated community from the rest of the city. And in this case, being subsidized public housing, that is even more so the case. There's the Berkeley Events and Media Venue, 1871 Berkeley Church. And again, just south of here is the very, very nice St. Lawrence neighborhood. One that has been integrating a lot of nice new developments. The very restrictive zoning in this area, at least according to Eric, has been freezing this particular neighborhood, and developers can't build without zoning amendments. You end up not attracting new businesses, and the existing ones start to struggle and fail, and then you end up with storefronts like this. And there is no business improvement area representing local business interests along this stretch, which is kind of surprising. They've tried to start one up, but it failed, and that's where a lot of the local businesses will pay into it. And the local BIA puts on events and promotes the area in general. That's why you see a lot of street festivals and that sort of thing. This used to be a Shoppers Drug Mart. This is Parliament Street. I might go for a walk up Parliament Street right after this video. But Queen Street west of Yonge is just so lively and vibrant and in demand. Dundas Street is a bit like this just north of here on the east side. I would say south of here, Queen, or rather King, Adelaide, and Richmond all seem to have a lot more going for them. Carlton is fairly well used and built up, as is Wellesley. It's really just Queen East and Dundas East. There's St. Paul's Basilica. Do you know what a stop sign is, buddy? It just rolls right through it, blocks the crossing. Yeah, go fuck yourself and learn how to drive someday. There is no traffic enforcement in the city. making a right turn and you got a red light, people don't even slow down, let alone come to a complete stop. Look at this, almost any other part of the city, at least downtown, and you'd have a pretty healthy city block. There, it's vacant storefronts. Fortunately, there are some affordable housing. A lot of these units would be rent controlled. In fact, all of them would be if they're older than 1998. We are entering Porttown. Settled by early immigrants, mostly from the County Cork in Ireland, hence the name. And what's interesting is once you get east of downtown through Riverside, and then Leslieville and the beaches, Queen Street East comes alive again. It goes from this to looking a lot more like its western counterpart west of Yonge Street. It's full of pedestrian activity and businesses that are doing quite well and not a lot of vacancy. I think these homes here on the right go back to the 1800s. You can see they are leaning pretty good. There's VizTech. If you need any photography equipment, definitely check them out. I bought my DaVinci Resolve studio license from VizTech. We walked by downtown Camera earlier, and just north of Queen and Church's Henry's. There's the old Dominion Brewery. That was a bar that recently closed down. Looks like a Mexican restaurant has opened up in its spot. There's some very nice tree-lined residential streets going north and south. Connecting up to Cabbagetown to the north of here. Old Victorian style homes. But I would go as far as calling this part of town almost desolate. This is about as busy as you get, and you wouldn't know that This was a city with insane demand for housing. Just walking through Queen Street East here. So I don't know the answer, but it's clear the city needs to rethink its zoning. But part of the problem is they collect property tax even from vacant commercial spots, and I think they collect more tax than they would from a residential unit. So the city's coffers are fine just sitting on properties like this. Thank you. If you want a tale of a very different street, you could go around the corner here to the right and walk back in the opposite direction along King Street. There's a 501 Queen streetcar. There's the Toronto Humane Society. And up ahead is the Queen Street Viaducts. That's River Street. And that'll take you out of downtown and lead you into a part of Riverdale known as Riverside. A neat little quirk of the street layout is that King Street starts at Queen Street at the east and it ends at Queen Street to the west. These people have a stop sign. All right, I guess you could call that a stop. Just set some cameras up and ticket the hell out of these people. Start printing money, city. It's free money. The police don't want to do any enforcement. Here's a look back towards where we started. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts and comments on this one. Eric doesn't know I'm doing this video, but thanks to him, and keep posting great content and informative content about the city. Again, there's a link to his channel. Do check his video out. As I think it's the most excellent watch. And we've arrived at the Don River. This divides downtown from Riverdale. If you wish to support what I do, there's links to my Patreon and YouTube channel membership down in the description. I've got an Instagram account at Johnny Strides, and there is a super thanks button appearing down below if you wish to say thanks that way. Anywho, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Yonk!